If you're in your 30s, your 40s, or your 50s, there's a moment most people experience. You look at your savings, you look at your investments, and a thought hits you. How am I this far behind? And the truth is, based on most of the numbers you see online, you probably are. But here's the part no one really talks about. Those benchmarks were not designed for real life. Welcome to Capital Curve. Let's start with what people are told they should have saved, because most of us have seen some version of this. Fidelity says, by age 35, you should have 2 times your salary saved. By age 45, 4 times your salary. By age 55, 7 times your salary. Sounds reasonable, right? So let's make it real. At age 35, the median income in the US is just over $80,000. That means you're supposed to have about $160,000 saved. At age 45, income is around $92,000. So the target becomes about $367,000. At age 55, income is around $82,000. So the target becomes roughly $575,000. So this is the expectation. These are the numbers people think they should hit. But now, let's look at reality. If we look at actual data, focusing only on liquid net worth, meaning savings and investments, not your house, here's what we see. At age 35, about $50,000 to $80,000. At age 45, about $100,000 to $150,000. At age 55, about $150,000 to $200,000. Now pause for a second, because these gaps are massive. At 35, you're supposed to have about $160,000, but most people have closer to $50,000 to $80,000. That's a gap of roughly $80,000 to $110,000. At 45, the gap widens. You're supposed to have around $360,000, but most people are closer to $100,000 to $150,000. That's a gap of about $200,000 to $265,000. At 55, the expectation is over $500,000, but reality is closer to $150,000 to $200,000. That's a gap of roughly $300,000 to over $400,000. This isn't a small difference. This is 2 completely different financial realities, one pushed by media and benchmarks, and one actually lived by real people. And when you look deeper, this starts to make a lot of sense, because not all wealth is equal. When we say net worth, we're including everything: your house, retirement accounts, investments, cash. But not all of that money works the same way. For most people, their biggest asset is their home. Their second largest is retirement accounts. And the smallest portion is actual liquid cash and investments. So even if someone has a net worth of $300,000, they don't have $300,000 they can actually use. You can't easily spend home equity. You can't freely access retirement accounts without penalties. The money you can actually use is usually the smallest portion. So yes, the gap is real, but here's the important shift. Those benchmarks are not rules. They are aspirations. Do you really need 10 times your salary to retire? Maybe, but maybe not, because retirement isn't based on income. It's based on expenses. 2 people can both earn $90,000, but one might need $70,000 a year in retirement, while the other only needs $40,000. Same income, completely different targets. So if you look at those numbers and think, I'm behind, pause, because you might be comparing yourself to a number that doesn't even apply to you. Now let's go deeper. Why does this gap exist? First, income reality. Yes, median income might be around $90,000, but that's before taxes, housing, childcare, and transport. So when someone says, just save 20% of your income, it sounds simple, but in real life, that's not always possible. Those benchmarks assume you started early, you had no debt, and you saved consistently from day one. That's a best case scenario, not real life. Second, this is the most expensive phase of life. Your 30s and 40s are not your peak wealth years, but they are your peak expense years. You're dealing with childcare, high rent or mortgage, healthcare, and sometimes supporting parents. Life is expensive, so savings doesn't move in a straight line. It goes up and down. Third, the system itself. In the past, people didn't start investing at 22. There were no easy apps, no auto investing, and limited access. Even today, most people start small and growth takes time. This is why data shows that midlife is where expenses peak, savings pause, and debt increases, because life is happening. Now here's something interesting. JP Morgan gives different benchmarks, more realistic ones. At age 35, about $125,000. At age 45, about $300,000. At age 55, about $450,000. Still strong targets, but less aggressive and less discouraging, because these are based on how people actually behave, not just what's mathematically perfect. So yes, even with more realistic targets, there's still a gap, which means we can improve. But to fix it, you need to think long term, because this isn't just a 45-year-old problem. This is a life cycle problem. At 35, you're building. At 45, pressure is highest. At 55, it's the catch-up phase. At 65, it's the transition to income. The goal isn't one perfect number. It's building a system that works for you. So if you feel behind, here's what to do. First, get clear on your number, not a random $1 million goal. Ask yourself, what do I need monthly in retirement? What will be covered? What gap do I need to fill? Second, increase your savings rate. This is your biggest lever, especially if you started late. Even small increases matter. Third, use auto escalation. Don't jump from 0 to 20% overnight. Increase gradually over time. Consistency wins. Fourth, use the right accounts. Start with an emergency fund, take advantage of employer matches, use tax-advantaged accounts, then move into investments. Fifth, invest. Don't just save. Saving alone isn't enough. Investing multiplies your money. Same effort, completely different results. Sixth, don't rush to catch up. Trying to fix 20 years in 1 year leads to burnout, bad decisions, and unnecessary risk. Seventh, focus on trajectory. Not where you are today, but where you're going. Because your financial life isn't a snapshot, it's a direction. So yes, you might be behind, but you are not out of time. Those big numbers you see online are not personalized. They are not built for your life. What matters is your expenses, your income needs, and your plan. Build your number, follow your path. So what do you think? Do you feel ahead or behind? And what are you doing about it? If you got value from this video, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.